Thank you so much. Let me just present. So I hope everybody is okay. Please take care of yourself. As much as possible, don't go outside. Yes, I'm good. Thank you so much. So I hope everybody is able to see me, hear me, is able to see the screen. Yes, great. So today we are going to start with Constitution. So Constitution is something very important. Like we say, what is the Constitution? What is the foundation? Okay, I'm not aware of the CACET exam being postponed, but there was a circular on the other exams. Is not audible? Is it audible, guys? Am I audible? Okay, cool. So I guess couple of you have mentioned, but then you have to check the uh, connections at your end. Okay. Okay, fine. Uh, yes. So like I'm telling you, today we are going to start and mostly complete with Constitution, because we are left with only what I guess three lectures more, excluding today's. Yeah. So we are going to finish Constitution for today. So Constitution is a very important subject, and it's a bit difficult to understand. But the sum of the portion is also covered in your earlier civics or political science or whatever you have had in your schools. So this is not a new to you to some extent, but yes, some portion has already been covered. Just give me a moment. Huh? I see some message from Noida chapter. Okay. So yes. Uh, okay. So the constitution, which now we are going, I'm on page 4 of all of you. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for your concern. Yes. So the constitution we are going to start today, and then we are left with what thoughts, right, and some portion of logical reasoning. So that's what we are going to see. So, so there is a lot of discussion on constitution, and it's a very fundamental subject which you should be knowing. Okay, because if you see the constitution, which lays down the basic structure of the nation's polity, is built on the foundations of certain fundamental values. So what you're having over here is a very abridged form for as an introduction to you, that this is what the Constitution of India is all about. Okay, the vision of our founding fathers and the aim and objective which they wanted to achieve through Constitution are contained in the preamble, the fundamental rights and directive principles. So these three are very important: the preamble, the fundamental rights, and the directive principles. So these three, if you see, they are considered as the soul of Constitution. That, like we say that it's the soul which drives us. Similarly, the preamble, the fundamental rights, and the directive principles are the soul considered of the Constitution. And the vision of socio-economic change through the Constitution is reflected in the preamble. The preamble expresses the ideals and aspirations at independence emerging out of a long period of foreign domination and oppression under a feudal system. The people were grimly struggling to be reborn into a life of dignity and hope. So all of us have studied history, that how we got independence, how India got in independence, how did the freedom struggle went. So everybody has gone through it. We know the pain. We know what kind of atrocities the people of India were suffering when under the British rule. So it's not new to us that what our forefathers or generations before kind of suffered when India was not free. That is, India was under British rule. So here we didn't had that life of dignity. We don't know what was going to be the future because we were ruled by somebody. We didn't know what if the India is going to go ahead. So all these things become very important. And if you see the constitution, which the things which lacked at that point of time, you see that we have all over here because it is we the people who have decided it, and it's our choice what we say, right? That's why we say go for voting and all, is because we the people of India have decided that this is what we want to have as our future and present as well. So the vision of socio-economic change, then the preamble expresses the ideals and aspirations, is what we saw. Then the scheme of constitution for realization of socio-economic agenda comprises both of justiciable fundamental rights as well as non-justiciable directive principles. So fundamental rights and directive principles. Now we're going to see what is fundamental rights and what are the directive principles. The judicial contribution to the synthesis and integration of fundamental rights and directive principles is the process of constitutionalizing social and economic rights has been crucial to the realization of the directive principle not only as a means to effectuate fundamental rights but also as a source of law for a welfare state. So this is very important. Then Constitution places a preeminent emphasis on the values of liberty and justice. Now, imagine a situation where you now forget about lockdown and everything and forget about a COVID scenario. I'm talking just about a non-COVID or a normal scenario. Because of COVID, now it's like pre-COVID and post-COVID is what we are, mentioning in joke. But imagine a situation which is pre-COVID, that were you being restricted any point of time to travel from one state to another? The answer is no. Were you restricted from practicing any profession, whichever you like? The answer is no. Were your parents restricted to, no, you can't take a job in Bangalore, you have to be in Delhi? Were they restricted? The answer is no. So you can take a, are you restricted to speak? Obviously, there are certain guidelines, but are you restricted? Now we see a lot of jokes on politics and we see a lot of things being spoken on social medias, on platforms. So is there a restriction per se in terms of what we should not speak or we should speak? To the extent, yes, but largely, if you see, no, we are not restricted that why we should not speak this, you should not speak this. Or are we coded that no, the color of your house should be this, you should be only wearing such kind of dresses, or you should be only doing likewise? Are we restricted to that? No, the answer is no. Your whatever your family wants or whatever your principles as a core are, that's different. But is India under that regime that no, this is a dress code for women or this is a dress code for men, and likewise? So you see, we have got lot of liberties, we have got lot of and we see it as a fundamental right. Now imagine a situation again. Are we restricted in terms of if we are kind of if there is some injustice happened to us and we go to the court of law, does the court of law ask us a proof whether you are rich or whether you from a particular family or whether you are like this? No. Or you are a citizen of this, then we'll not entertain it. Or if you are particular caste, we will not entertain you. No, the justice is delivered to all, or anybody can seek justice in India. Anybody can approach the court of law and seek justice out of whatever injustice has happened to them. So these are some basics and core things which we are going to further study in detail today in the constitutional topic. So, the Constitution places a preeminent emphasis on the values of liberty and justice, on treating all citizens as equal before law, and on safeguarding the rights of minorities and the oppressed. Okay, this is what I'm telling you. The people of India derive their existence as a political community from the constitution which we the people, right? That's why if you see, read the constitution, it is we the people. So we, it is not I, it is not you, it is we. It is like we all have decided. So gave to ourselves. So it is like we have decided it, it is for us, and we are only the persons who are safeguarding it. So it is everything around we. Okay, and not mere a democracy that the people are enjoying to nurture. It is because the country is republic. That's why it is what we say Republic of India, right? And not a mere democracy that people are enjoying to nurture and indeed celebrate. So that's why we don't have any cap on no that you have to speak only in English, you have to speak in Marathi, you have to speak in Gujarati. It's not a condition. We can speak any language we want, we can practice any religion we want. It is all up to us that how you want to profess a particular religion, or what diversity you have to maintain. So I can very well celebrate all cultural things which my religion allows me to do, or which I preach. Where if you are preaching any different religion, you can do that. And we respect each other, right? It's not that it's only one religion in India which is to be followed, right? All religion. That's why we say it is a secular India. It is not a compulsory, like there are some states where there is a compulsion to follow only one religion, but it is not like so in India. We can practice anywhere. Or if you see, there are certain restrictions on having, say, for example, temples or mosques or a church. There is some countries have a restriction that no, you can't have a mosque or you cannot have a temple built in this country. We don't have anything, any restrictions, that whatever religion we want to preach, we can preach. Whatever diversity we want to follow, we can follow. So, though the Indian tapestry of traditional multiculturalism, nourished by many countries of assimilative forces, have been subject to occasional fissures, the most diverse nation on earth has been able to overcome those crises and use the innate strength of Indian Republic to uphold the dignity and integrity of India. So that's what we see. We always say that we may have different religions, we may have different states having different geography, the way they standard of living, the way they live, but ultimately we are all Indians, right? We don't say that, oh, I'm just this. We say finally, when even if there are, if there have been attacks on India by the external forces, all the time we have been united, and that's the strength which we have, that despite being diverse, we are still united. So today we are going to see again the broad framework of constitution. So the Constitution of India came into force, I'm sure all of you know, on January 26, 1950, right? What we celebrate it as? Anybody? Yes? Nobody? Yes, thank you. I thought everybody is either sleeping or they don't know what is the day. Yes, it is Republic Day of India, which we celebrate. Uh, It is a comprehensive document. Apart from dealing with the structure of a government, the Constitution makes detailed provisions for the rights of citizens and other persons in a number of entrenched provisions, and for the principles to be followed by the state in the governance of the country, labeled as Directive Principles of State Policy. Now, understand the definition of state here is not what we generally refer. Okay, we'll see that, but just concentrate. All public authorities, legislative, administrative, and judicial, derive their powers directly or indirectly from the Constitution, which in turn derive its authority from the people. So, the preamble to the Constitution sets out the aims and aspirations of people of India. It is a part of Constitution The preamble declares India to be sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, democratic republic, and secures to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Okay, so this is what I was explaining you. It is declared by the constitution, has been given by the people to themselves. So like I told you, it is we the people, by the people, for the people, right? It's we the people, by the people, and for the people. So it is, everything is us. We have formed it by the people, and it is for us again. So this is what our constitution is. The polity assured to the people of India by the constitution is described in the preamble as sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic. Now, what we understand by each word we are going to see. The expression sovereign signifies that republic is internally and externally sovereign. Sovereign in the strict and narrow sense of term implies independence all round, within and without the borders. That's what I was explaining you, right? There is no restriction at all, that where you can go, where you cannot go, now I'm not talking about COVID scenario again, or a particular issue like there is a tsunami where people have been, kind of vacated just to avoid their loss of lives. I'm not talking about all these scenarios. I'm talking about a general scenario where we are not restricted. We can go anywhere. We can travel anywhere. We don't require a passport, right? Or we don't require a proof that why are you coming in Uttar Pradesh or why are you coming to Delhi. It's not that we have to show any pass that, oh, it is for this particular reason, and then only you are able to enter say Gujarat, or you're able to enter Chennai. No, you can travel anywhere, you can practice anywhere, you can roam around, you can study. There is nothing which bars you from that, right? As discussed above, legal sovereignty is vested in the people of India, and political sovereignty is distributed between union and state. So we have union, that is a central, and we have states. That is, now states here means state of Uttar Pradesh, state of Maharashtra, and likewise. The democratic character of Indian polity is illustrated by the provisions and conferring on the adult citizens the right to vote, and the provisions for elected representatives and responsibility of the executive to the legislature. That's why we have right to vote, the central as well as the state. So we have right to vote on attaining the majority. So the word socialist added by the 42nd Amendment aims to secure to its people justice, social, economic, and political. So justice, like I told you, is a very important facet, because if there is, like I told you, if there is a right, there has to be the way by which I can enforce my right. Otherwise, that right is of no use, right? Say, for example, you have been told that, okay, you have the right to practice profession, but then if if you go to some other state, they just say, oh, no, no, how can you come here? So if I'm given a right to practice a profession which I would like to choose, and the way in, or in the state in which I would like to choose, and if I'm not been able to do that, then I should be having some recourse to it, right? You say, what is the use if I don't have the right to enforce it? So I can go to the court of law and say, oh, this person is not letting me practice my profession. So that's what it is, because there should be, when there is a right, there should also be a remedy, is the legal principle. Where there is a right, there should be a remedy. So when I have got the right, I should be having the way by which I can enforce that right. And this is what we are saying: justice, social, economic, and political. So now we are going to see what is federal or unitary. Constitution of India is basically federal, but with certain unitary features. So just mark this case, Keshavananda Bharti versus State of Kerala. This is a famous case, celebrated case, which all of you must now. Again, it's a big it's a subject in itself. Keshavananda Bharti versus State of Kerala is a subject in itself. But now, since we have to concentrate, and I can't take you more, I'll just be concentrating on what we have. Okay. where the view that federal features form the basic structure of Indian constitution. However, there are discussions as to whether Indian constitution establishes a federal system or it stipulates a unitary form of government with some basic federal features. Thus, to decide whether constitution is federal, unitary or quasi-federal, it would be better to have a look at the contents of constitution. So, the essential features of a federal polity or system. Now, we are going to understand what is federal, what is unitary system. Okay, federal policy or system are dual government. So that's why if you see, we have dual government, right? We have a state government and we also have a central government. Distribution of power. So there is some powers are distributed to the state. It is being controlled by the central, or some the central can directly have the powers. Supremacy of constitution, independence of judiciary. So this independence of judiciary is always a debated and often talked about topic, that whether the judiciary, because if, for example, if the judiciary is what is judiciary? The judiciary is the courts, the Supreme Court of India, the High Courts of India, right? Now, these judges have an independent view. Now, imagine if the judges are to report to the Prime Minister of India, then do you think they will have an independent opinion altogether? The answer is no, right? So, it is important that there is an independence of judiciary. They have their own opinion. Otherwise, again, we will not be having all these things, because if it is finally controlled by the state or central, then today we can see that even the Prime Minister can be called in the court of law, or the states, there are the chief ministers can be, if there can be cases, and likewise. So things what I want to say here is, uh, judiciary independence is very important. So written constitution is what we have, and a rigid procedure for the amendment of constitution. So our amendment of constitution is not very easy. Okay, like we have amendments to many acts, and likewise, it is not very easy to amend the constitution of India. Yes. So the essential features of this is what we have seen. The political system introduced by our constitution possesses all the aforesaid essentials of a federal polity, as both the union and central state and their respective organs derive their authority from the constitution. So where does this power come from? It is from the Constitution of India. There is a division of legislative and executive powers between the union and center state. The Supreme Court stands at the head of our judiciary to guard against the violation of the constitutional provisions. So if you see, even recently, there have been a lot of PIL, that is public interest litigation, writ petitions which are being filed in the High Court, Supreme Court of India, where if there is a deviation from certain rights or certain fundamental rights are being breached, then that has been contested in the court, saying, oh, my fundamental right which I have is being breached. So this is what, that's why we say it is the head of our judiciary to guard against the violation of the constitutional provisions. The question as to whether the Indian constitution has a federal form of government or a unitary constitution, which some has come up with various cases. Now we'll see what are the observations made in this particular context. Now this chart is a very important chart. Please concentrate on this chart. So this is what these are the fundamental rights which we enjoy. Right to equality, right? We say that we have equal rights. Now there are certain special rights, of course, but that is only because of some special reasons, right? Otherwise, it is everywhere we have equal. So right to equality, we say that even if you are whatever religion you practice, whatever caste, creed, sex, whatever you have, you are treated equal before law, right? It is not that just I'm being women, so the law, so the justice will be given to me, or if I'm a particular caste, then the justice will be given to me. No, gone are those days when some things might have been practiced likewise. So we are treated equal before law. It is not like, oh, you are rich, then you are given a special treatment. No. Right to freedom. This is what we have discussed. Right against exploitation. If there is an exploitation which is happening, then you have the right to kind of get it enforced. No, this is an exploitation against a particular thing, and that can be enforced. Right to freedom of religion, which we discussed, cultural and educational rights we discussed, and right to constitutional remedies. So this is what again are the fundamental rights which we all of us enjoy and have as a citizen of India, right? So fundamental rights. Now there is a each topic in itself is a subject. Okay, guys, this every right is a subject in itself. So how much we have covered, I'll try to just restrict or narrow my approach only to what you have. Because if once even right to equality we take, it can run into entire series of lectures. Okay. So part 3 of the constitution guarantees 6 categories of fundamental rights. You have to remember these 6 categories because this is also important from your exam perspective. So right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. Now, this is where the which provision guaranteed. So, previously, right to property under 31 was also guaranteed as a fundamental right, which has been removed. Now, right to property is not a fundamental right, it is now a legal right. So, you can have property, but attached to it that why you cannot have a property and likewise. Okay. Apart from this, Article 12, do we have to remember Article also? Yes, ideally, yes, if you can, that is great. Article 12 and 13 deals with the definition of state and law, and Article 33 to 35 deals with the general provisions of fundamental rights. Now, what is important here is no fundamental right in India is absolute. Now, this is very important. Is absolute and reasonable restrictions can be imposed in the interest of the state by valid legislation, and in such a case, the court normally would respect the legislative policy behind the same. Now, if tomorrow somebody goes that why lockdown has been imposed in India, do you think it will be the challenge can sail through? The answer may be no, because it was for the benefit of people, right? It's not, the government is not interested to restrict your right to travel or restrict your right to move here and there. It is out of your health or safety that this is being kind of imposed. So if today somebody now obviously we have got unlocked down, we have already started. But imagine if somebody would have contested that why I'm being forced to sit at home, or why I'm being forced to can't travel. No, it is public policy. Yes, it's obviously in the interest of public which is being kind of enforced, right? Otherwise it would have been now for example everything is normalized and only some people are not able to travel, or a particular state has been banned that no person from this state should come, then it is obviously a breach of fundamental right. But when there are issues, and that's why if you see it is being mentioned, it is not absolute. It can come with reasonable restrictions. And you remember the discussions which we had in the first lecture, prohibition and restrictions are two different things. Prohibition is a complete no-no. Restriction means you can do that things, but it may attract some restrictions. Okay. So no fundamental right in India is absolute, is what we understand. It can come with reasonable restrictions. So that's why you can't just go and speak anything, whatever you want, and abuse anybody and do whatever you want, talk anything bad. That's because you have a freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean it's absolute. If it is against public policy, then of course, if somebody is just speaking that can create riots, or that can create a division between, say, for example, Hindu and Muslims, which is being agitated, and that can create serious repercussions on the public as large, then of course you may be proper remedies can be taken, because your freedom of speech you have. That doesn't mean you can speak anything and anyhow and anywhere, and without there are restrictions certainly. Okay. No fundamental rights is what we have seen. From the point of view of persons to whom the rights are available, the fundamental rights may be classified as Article 15, 16, 19, and 30 are only guaranteed to citizens. Article 14, 20, 21, 22, 23. So, what are the rights of foreigner, citizen, or foreigner? What are only available to the citizens of India is what is being discussed. Now, we'll understand what is a state. So this is like I told you at the earlier, it is not just okay. I have everything. Everybody is able to hear me, right? So yes. So I guess there is only problem with some persons, not everybody. Okay, great. State. Now I told you right that you have to concentrate that what is state, and state is not generally what we understand in the terms of Constitution of India. Okay, because state otherwise we feel the state of Maharashtra, state of Rajasthan, but here the state definition is different. With a few exceptions, all the fundamental rights are available against the state. Under Article 12, unless the context otherwise requires, state includes the government and Parliament of India, the government and legislatures of each states, and all the local authorities within the territory of India or under the control of Government of India. So now you get it. It is state does not mean the state of uh, uh, any particular state. What we understand, state here has got a wider meaning in the Constitution of India. So the expression local authority is what we understand. So basically, if you see any government, be it a state government, be it a central government, be it a local authorities, anything coming under the purview of government becomes state over here. Okay. So district board, panchayats, improvement trust, port trust. So all wherever it is being controlled by the state, or its state here means again central or state or government, basically any government or a combination of governments also become state. So in Ajay Hasia versus Khalid Mujib, the Supreme Court has enunciated the following test for determining whether an entity is an instrumentality or agency of state. So that's what I'm telling you. That state here has got a wider meaning. State here means wherever there is a control, like we saw for holding subsidiary, where there is a control which is being established by another entity. Similarly, if there is a control of government in a particular institution or a body or an entity, then it becomes a state. So if the entire share capital of a corporation, so government companies, basically, if it is by a state government, two or more state governments or central government or combination of any of these, then it is a state. You can say it is a state, or it can come under the definition because it is being controlled. The financial assistance of state is being provided where the corporation enjoys a monopoly status which is conferred or protected by the state. Now, like for example, railways or things where there are also discussions about privatization of some aspects and or defense. All these are government, like what we say, it's government. It's about state because it's being controlled, managed, owned by the state. It is the functions of corporations are of public importance. So any public important things, like I'm telling you about defense, which is of entire country. It is not only for a particular region. It is about entire country as a whole. So if a department of government is transferred to a corporation, it would be a strong factor supporting an inference of the corporation being an instrumentality or agency of state government. And we're going to see what is justifiability. We are seeing about fundamental rights. What is justifiability? Article 13 gives uh, uh, teeth to the fundamental rights. It lays down the rules of interpretation in regard to laws inconsistent with in or derogation of fundamental rights. Article 13(1) relates to the laws already in force, that is, a law which were in force before the commencement of Constitution. A declaration of court of their invalidity, however, will be necessary. Now, this is something existing and this is future. So, Article 13(2) relates to the future laws made after the commencement of Constitution. So, it is pre-Constitution and post-Constitution. So this is what, then we'll go to right to equality. Yes, this is very important. Article 13 came up with judicial review in a number of cases, and courts evolved doctrines like doctrine of eclipse, severability, prospective overruling, acquiescence for interpreting the provisions of Article 13. So, right of equality. Now we'll go to right of equality. This is again very important for all of you, even from your exams perspective. 14 to 18 deals with equality and its various facets. The general principle finds expression in Article 14. Now we understand what is equality. So we discussed about this, right? Equality before law, like we discussed, prohibition of discrimination on ground of religion, race, caste, sex, or place or birth. So like I told you, gone are the days where particular caste people were not allowed to drink water in a particular lake or likewise. We don't have anything like this, right? Anybody can travel, anybody can have, and there is no discrimination at all. So you must have heard about also the discrimination should not be there. Abolition of titles. Now there is no titles like which we had in the or the British era, like sir or likewise. Titles here is about that, a public title which is being given or likewise. But yes, doctors, and this is not what we are talking about, or an advocate or a CS. These are not the titles which we are talking about. Okay. Abolition of untouchability, we know what is untouchability, and now there exists no untouchability at all, and if there is existing some issues about untouchability, that can be challenged, and things can be sorted out for that. Yes, equality of opportunity in the matters of public employment. So that's why if you see, there is an equality which is being kind of given. Now we're going to see equality before the law and equal protection of law. This is what we have studied. I'll just help you in nutshell. The state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of laws within the territory of India. So that's what I said, that anybody of you, if there is a breach of any fundamental rights, and if you see that this is an issue, you can approach to the court of law and get it enforced, or try to seek justice out of it. But it is not that you are being prohibited. No, you can't go and approach the court of law. So you have equal protection. It doesn't, the court, and that's why if you see the Statue of Liberty things, and basically if it is in the court of law, everybody is treated equal, even you're rich, poor, particular caste, then that doesn't make a difference. Okay. Right to equality is also recognized as one of the basic features of constitution. Then prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion. So Article 15(1) prohibits the state from discriminating against any citizen on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, place or birth, or any of them. Article 15(2) lays down that no citizen shall be subjected to any disability, restriction or condition with regard to access to shop, public restaurant, hotels, places of public entertainment, etc., use of wells, is what we have discussed. That this is not that you only these people can go, only these people can't go, likewise. Then, yes, 15(4) permits the states to make special provisions for the advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes. So this is a special provision for them which is being created, so that now you see that you may also see that there are special provisions made for women or likewise, but that is only to protect these people who have been kind of suffering, or there are a lot of sufferings attached to them. Now we'll go to equality or of opportunity in the matter of public employment. Let me see how much I'm still wanting to cover. Okay, so we have to finish today constitution. Yes, so equal opportunity in the matters of public employment. 16.1 guarantees to all citizens equality of opportunity in matters relating to employment or appointment of office under state. This is what we understand. Prohibits discrimination against a citizen. So discrimination is not allowed. So Parliament can make a law in regard to class or classes of employment, where that's why if you see there are some quota system like, and just to help the people over there, a provision can be made for reservation. So reservations are there. Then nothing in this article shall prevent from making a provision for reservation in matters of promotion with consequential seniority or to any class or classes of post in the services under the state in favor of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes which are in the opinion of state are not adequately represented. Okay. No, there is no noise which is coming. Don't worry about it. Abolition of untouchability. Uh, Untouchability is abolished and its practice is in any form is forbidden. We understand this. Abolition of titles is what we have understood. So if you see many persons where sir, I told you, right? Raj Bahadur, Raj Sahib and all these things. So there is no titles which are being granted to people. I'm not talking about titles like, again, I'll repeat, that doctor, advocate, CS, these are the titles by profession which you have got. But this is not to create a rift. It is you're acquiring out of the profession and not from the particular state title which is being granted. Or some people fondly may give somebody a title. That is not the title which we are talking about. Military. So, like I told you, article provides under military or academic distinction. So, military, that is colonel, lieutenant colonel, and likewise. Then yes, Padma Shri is again not a title, but it is a what I would say, it is a respect which is being given or a recognition which is being given. Okay. The no person who is then we understand no holding any office or profit shall without the consent of uh, the president accepted. Now, I guess this is very easy for you to understand. Now we'll go further. Constitution guarantees to the citizens of India 6 freedoms is what we have studied. Freedom of speech and expression, assembly peaceably and without arms. So there is now, of course, forget about the COVID scenario, but otherwise, we could meet anywhere. There is no restriction that you can call. Of course, if there is from a public transport issue or likewise, you may have to take approvals and likewise. But otherwise, you can have assemblies, form association or unions. Now you can form association. That's why we see there are so many unions as well, association of people, move freely throughout the territory of India. So these are the 6 freedoms which we have: reside and settle in any part of territory. So if even if I'm particular, I'm from Assam, I can settle in Maharashtra. That's also possible. We don't have any restriction on it. Practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business. So even if my forefathers were doctors, I can practice law. There is no bar that why I should not practice a particular profession. You're free to practice anything. It's not like the hierarchical things which we had earlier, that no, if you are a particular kind of caste, then you should only do such particular activities. No, you can do anything, profession, any profession which we can do. Okay. Rights relating to freedom is what we see. This is what we have discussed. Permissible restrictions. So restrictions, sovereignty and integrity of state, security. So like I told you, these kind of things will be there. These are rights or freedoms given to you, but it is these restrictions will be there. So friendly relations, public order, decency or morality will be there. Contempt of court, defamation. So I can't just go and defame somebody anything and I can say, oh, this is my right to freedom. No. Or I have got a freedom of speech. No. So these things are going to be there with permissible restrictions. Permissible restrictions is what we have seen. Then comes protection of life and personal liberty. So Article 21, now this is a very important article, confers on every person the fundamental right to life and personal liberty. Now there are hundreds and thousands of case laws on this, and it's a very well discussed and debated topics. It says that no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. This procedure established by law is very important, right? So the right to life includes those things which make life meaningful. So a right to life has been again a very celebrated thing, that no, I have got the right to life. Now it includes a dignified and meaningful life. So this is there are many case laws on this, like right to live in freedom from noise pollution is a fundamental right. Then it was held that the right to travel is included with the expression of personal liberty, and therefore no person can be deprived of his right to travel except according to the procedure or established by law. So since a passport is essential for enjoyment of right, the denial of passport amounts to deprivation of personal liberty. So if a person is being, now there are certain restrictions put on certain persons that you cannot travel, but that is only as per the procedure of law. So say for example, if there is a criminal procedure code or likewise, so there are restrictions put that no, you cannot go out of, because if somebody has committed a fraud and his passport has been impounded by the government, that say no, you can't travel outside India. It is with a certain procedure which is being established. So the procedure of law means procedure laid down by the statute or procedure described by the law of state. So accordingly, first there must be a law justifying interference with person's life and personal liberty, and secondly, the law should be valid law, and therefore thirdly, the procedure laid down by the law shall be having strictly followed. So the procedure has to be followed. Right to education. Now this is, I guess, very simple, right? And you can understand. Right to exploitation is also very easy. No child below age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory, mine, or engaged. And that's why if you see, we say child labor is not allowed, and likewise, because you can't exploit children. Plus, human trafficking is also one of the concern which is addressed over here. That it's a sale. Now we don't have bonded labors, right? That people are being sold, and if it is being there, it is against, obviously, the rights have been exploited, which is not right, or which is not legally correct to do, right? You can't sell women, you can't sell children, you cannot sell men as bonded laborers like used to have in the previous era. So prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, right? This is a very fundamental thing. Prohibition of employment of children in factories. So this is what you understand. Right to freedom of religion, I guess you all understand very well. Freedom of conscience and free profession, propagation of religion, freedom to manage religious affairs, freedom as to payment of taxes for any promotion of any particular religion, and freedom as to attendance at religious instruction or religious worship in certain educational institution. Uh, yes, so right to constitutional remedies. Article 32 guarantees the enforcement of fundamental right. Now, this is a very important thing, and you need to concentrate over here. Remedies for enforcement of fundamental rights. Now, there is this writs, which are you should be remembering. Before that, there is an elaborate discussion on writs. So we will take this and then we'll go to the writs, because there is an elaborate discussion of what you mean by writs and what are the types of writs. Now, directive principles of state policies. The subcommittee on fundamental rights. Yes, I'll explain what is writs. We'll go to that. There is a separate discussion on it, so I will wait for that discussion to come. Okay. The subcommittee on fundamental rights constituted by the Constituent Assembly suggested two types of fundamental rights. One which can be enforced in the court of law, and the other because of their different nature, cannot be enforced in the law of court. Later on, however, the former were put under the head fundamental rights as part 3, which we have discussed, and put separately in part 4 under the head of directive principles. Now, this is a very key thing which you should be remembering. Okay. The articles included in part 4 contain certain directives which are the guidelines for the government to lead the country. So these are the guidelines basically that how the government should be addressing the concerns. Article 37 provides that provisions contained in this part shall not be enforceable by any court, but the principles therein laid down are nevertheless the fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply these principles. These are the principles, like a guidelines given to the state. Now, what are these? The directives are not enforceable in courts and do not create any justifiable rights in the favor of individuals. So this has to be remembered that what are directive principles and how they are different. The directive principles require to be implemented by legislation so long as there is no law carrying out policy laid down in directive, neither the state nor an individual can violate any existing law. The directives per se do not confer upon or take away any legislative power. The courts cannot declare any law as void on the ground that it contravenes the directive. This is also very important, and you should remember the courts cannot declare any law as void on the ground that it contravenes any directive principles. The courts are not competent to compel the government to carry out any directives or to make any law for that purpose. Now, what are the important directive principles is we are going to see. Now, I'll not be taking everything in detail because some are very self-explanatory in terms of your basic understanding. Okay. State to secure social order for promotion of welfare of the people. So the state must strive to promote the welfare by securing and protecting in which justice, social, economic, and political should inform all institutions of the national life. So the state shall in particular strive to minimize the inequalities in income. So that's why if you see there are certain schemes, there are certain reservations, is all in order to promote welfare of the people. Certain principles to be followed. The citizens, men and women, equally have the right to an adequate means of livelihood, that the ownership and control are so distributed so as best to subserve the common goals. So that's why if you see there must be equality. Everybody should have the right to adequate means of livelihood. So basically the welfare of the people is being at the center stage, and that's why certain policies can be brought out. Equal pay for equal work. Now we have this equal remuneration and all that. It's not that if I work I'll get a lesser pay, and if the same work is carried out by a male employee he'll get some higher pay. No, if it is the same work, then obviously both, even if I'm a woman or if it is a male person, then also the same amount of money will be given. That the health and strength is not abused and citizens are not forced by the economic necessity. The childhood and youth are protected against exploitation and against moral or material abandonment. Equal opportunity is what we have seen. Yes. Then steps must be taken to organize. Yes, legal aid is there again. Then village panchayats, if you see, are there. Economic activity and development of state must effectively for securing the right to work, to education, to public assistance. So unemployment, old age people are also being considered. Human conditions for maternity relief. So that's why if you see, there are various laws. If you see, there are now. So, for example, in case of maternity, there is a Maternity Act. So, likewise, how these are being established is either by way of some law, policy, by which these are being governed generally. The state must then provisions must be made for the state must endeavor to secure living wage and good standard of life to all types of workers, and promotes cottage industry and exam, etc. The state takes steps by suitable legislation or in any other way to secure the participation of workers. So that's why if you see there are unions, there are trade organizations, so that even workers are being participating in the industry. Then, yes, nutritional and standard of living, public health. So, if you see this all COVID tests which are being taken up by the government or the screening, and likewise, this is all in public health, right? Importance given to public health or the expenses which are being made, the information which is being shared, all is this to in consideration of public health. Then state must organize agriculture and animal husbandry, then protect, improve environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. So this is again important from the standard, the way of living that yes, there should be wildlife also, environment also should be protected. Protection of monuments and places of national importance. State must have separate from executive from judiciary in public services. Yes, and peace and security, you understand. Now we are going to understand whenever there is a right, there also comes, like we saw, a remedy, but a right also has a duty attached to it. It is not just you have a right and you don't have any obligations. No, generally, when there are rights, there are obligations also attached to it. 51A imposes the fundamental duties on every citizen. Now, these are the fundamental duties. Now, it is ideal that you should be knowing the fundamental duties, even from your exam perspective, but also this is for your knowledge perspective also. To abide by the Constitution, to cherish and follow the noble ideas, to uphold, the protect sovereignty, unity, and integrity, to defend the country and render national services when called upon, to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood, to value, preserve rich heritage, to protect and improve natural environment, to develop the scientific temper. I guess these are very easy to understand. We also follow this to safeguard public property and to abjure violence, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor. So since the duties are imposed upon citizens and not upon the states, legislation is necessary for their implementation. Now we are going to see this is what are the fundamental duties what we discussed. Now let's understand what is citizenship, because we always talk about NRIs, we always talk about the green cards about the American people, and likewise like to get a citizenship. So what about India? So let's understand about India. The state is a compound made of citizens, and this is what Aristotle has mentioned. National citizenship remains an essential and enduring features of modern life in terms of politics and election, welfare state. Because if who should be protected, whether it is the person is a citizen of India, whether it's a foreigner, like what is the status of that person? Um, so this becomes a very important feature. Now we'll see Article 5 provides that that at the commencement of Constitution, every person who has his domicile in the territory of India. So domicile and who was born in the territory of India like you and me, or either of his parents were born in the territory of India, or who has been ordinarily resident in territory of India for not less than 5 years immediately preceding such commencement, the commencement of constitution is being taught, shall be a citizen of India. So this is a criteria for citizenship at the commencement of constitution. And what are the features that in order to qualify you as a citizen of India? Now, this you're going to Parliament is what you're going to study on your own, because you have been studying political, I guess, civics or political science in your schools, and this is not something which is new to you. That what is president, what is parliament, house of people, councillor. Yes, so history and civics is what you have studied. So I guess you can take it on your own. in this. Then we will see what I want to focus is, yes, you know all this, that we have got legislative council and also governor, and this is what you already know. So I will not be taking that. Yes, what I would be now taking is the hierarchy over here, or the court systems. So the courts in Indian legal system, broadly speaking, consist of Supreme Court. We all know the apex court. If something is in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court, it's the law of land. It becomes a precedent, what we call. The high courts, yeah, I know there are a lot of interesting topics around this, that is the CA and an NRC and all. But I would have loved to discuss the topics. If we have time, I will discuss. But let me finish first the topics which we have at hand, and then I'm happy to discuss, because there are, see, if you talk about constitution, there are many things which come which play a role over here, and these are like current happenings which we see. Okay. Uh, then the subordinate court. So Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the country, both for the matters of ordinary law and interpreting the Constitution, is an institution created by the Constitution. So it is an institution, but it is created by the Constitution. Immediately before independence, the Privy Council was the highest appellate authority for British India. But yes, after independence, we have Supreme Court. You can see the High Courts, district and subordinate courts. Then we have civil courts and criminal courts. So to deal with the cases relating to civil matters, and cases relating to the Indian Penal Code. So then the criminal procedure code is which is applicable. So this is what we understand. High courts. The high courts that function under Constitution were not created for the first time. Some high courts existed before the Constitution. So we know that high courts in British were established first under the Indian High Courts Act, and the remaining were established or continued under the Constitution or under special acts. So we may say that Bombay, Calcutta, now of course it's Mumbai, Delhi have ordinary original civil jurisdiction, that is jurisdiction to try regular civil suits for their respective cities. Now there is what we call it as a territorial jurisdiction, that territory related jurisdiction. High courts can also hear references made by the appellate tribunal under the Income Tax Act and other tribunals. So it should be added that the writ jurisdiction vested in present in all high courts by Constitution was before the Constitution vested only in the high court. So the writs which we are going to study was only with the high courts of Mumbai, Kolkata and Madras, but now of course it is different. Then subordinate courts is what we understand. Criminal courts also I explained. Then we are going to see now the writs portion part. Now this writs is a very important element, and that's why I told you this is the last thing which I'm going to take in Constitution, and then all the amendments, how the amendments have taken place, you can read it on your own. That what led to the amendments and what was the amendment all about. So this you're going to do it on your own. Okay, I'm going to take writs, and we will be done with Constitution. Yes, so concentrate here, the writs. This writs is a very important facet. Now, if you see, this is, you may see that the writs have been filed in the High Courts and the Supreme Court of India. So under the Constitution, by virtue of article, yes, we are going to study what is mandamus and quo warranto. We are going to study. So just hold yourself and have a bit of patience. Okay. Under the Constitution, by virtue of Article 226, every High Court has the power to issue directions or orders or writs, including the writs in the nature of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, and certiorari. So these are the writs which are important, and people generally file these writs in the high courts or Supreme Court of India. So people are asking me that, okay, ma'am, what is writs? So basically, if you see, it is a form or if you go by a dictionary meaning, it will be a form or a written command in the name of obviously the court or the other legal authority. So basically, it is an order that from given by a court to do a particular a direction, a directive. So a written command, it is a command that do this kind of thing. So a form of a written command in the name of a court or other legal authority to act or to abstain. So don't do this or do this is what generally we can say what is meant, a general understanding of what writ is all about. We'll see what are the types of writ. So this power is exercised by each court throughout the territory in relation to which it exercises jurisdiction. The Supreme Court could be moved by appropriate proceedings for the issue of the directions or orders or writs as referred to in Article 226 for the enforcement of the rights guaranteed by Part 3 of the Constitution. Article 32 itself being a fundamental right, the constitutional remedy of writ is available to anyone whose fundamental rights are infringed by the state action. Okay. Now, what are the types of writs? Now, these writs are very important, and again, from the perspective of your exam also. Now, concentrate. What is habeas corpus? So, an effective bulwark of personal liberty. That this is again can be one of your FAQ that they may say what is habeas corpus, and then they may give some alternatives, and in that it is effective bulwark of personal liberty can be also one of the choice given to you. Is a remedy. Now, what habeas corpus literally mean to have the body? Now, what is meaning to have the body? When a prima facie case for the issue of writ has been made, then the court can issue rule nisi upon the relevant authority to show cause why the writ should not be issued. So, say for example, this writ has to be. This is in the national order to let the court know on what grounds he has been confined and to set him free if there is no justification for his detention. So, say for example, somebody is being detained by the police authorities. There should be, like we saw, everybody has got the freedom of liberty. Like everybody has got a liberty to go here and there and travel and likewise. But if this is being practiced, that somebody is being detained, then it can be only under the procedure of law, like what we saw. But if this is not as per the procedure of law, and if there is somebody has been just detained, then he can say, oh, the writ can be filed for habeas corpus. That why has this person liberty, like the liberty to travel, liberty to go outside? Like earlier, you must have heard about house arrests. You must have heard in the history, house arrest. That's what it is. Now, can anybody be put under house arrest unless it is something which is related to the safety or or there is some procedure which is being established? This is what the habeas corpus is all about. That the writ has to be obeyed by the detaining authority by producing the person before the court. So, and so, for example, if the employer kind of detains my passport, saying no, your passport is dead. I say, wonder what authority you've got to detain my passport? How can you impound my passport? How can you take away? You are not letting me go off the country. Why? Unless there are particular grounds attached to it. So the applicant may be the prisoner or any person acting on his behalf to safeguard his liberty for the issuance of writ of habeas corpus, as no man can be punished or deprived of his personal liberty except for violation of law and in ordinary legal manner. So of course, now we see there are prisoners. Why there are prisoners? Because there is something which they have not done which is right, and that's why they have been put in prison. As simple as that. Now the prisoners can't say, oh, I've got a liberty to move here and there, why have you detained me? No, that is under an established procedure of law is why they are in prison. And of course, under the if the court have sentenced them to the jail or imprisonment for lifetime, then of course these things are different. So then you can't do, oh, this is how you can do it. But if it is not so, then of course this can come into picture. So an appeal to the Supreme Court of India may lie against an order granting or rejecting the application. The disobedience to this writ is met with punishment for contempt of court under the Contempts of Court Act. So I hope you get what is habeas corpus. Okay. Uh, yes. Now, mandamus. The word mandamus literally means we command. So that if you see, this is a court direction which is coming up. If you see any types of writs, it's a court direction, but a special type of court direction. That's why this is being now. Generally, what happens is why these writs are. Generally, what if there is a matter? How does all matters lie directly to the Supreme Court or the High Courts of India? What do you think? Any matter, can you go directly to the Supreme Court of India? Unless, of course, this is a writ or likewise. So these writs are the special ways, okay, that you don't have to follow the hierarchy. Otherwise, if it is a land matter, can I go directly to the Supreme Court of India that's saying, oh, this is a land matter? No, you have to follow the hierarchy that, okay, there is a lower court, then there is a high court or say likewise. So you have to follow that hierarchy. But what is speciality about this writs is you can directly approach the high court. And that's why if you see the PIs have been filed in the Supreme Court, the writs have been filed in the Supreme Court. Even today, when all the COVID scenarios are happening, there are various ways by which the PIs and writs have been filed. That this is a there is a problem over here, and likewise, so many PIs have been recently filed. So here, this is a what I would say an exception where you don't have to follow the hierarchy. You can approach the higher courts directly and by filing these type of writs. Okay. The word mandamus literally means we command. The writs of mandamus is a command issued. Now it is a command issued to direct any person, corporation, inferior court, or government requiring him or it to do a particular thing specified therein which pertains to his or its office and is further in the nature of public duty. So this thing is very important now, because we will get confused with mandamus, prohibition, and certiorari. Just concentrate the important words here are therein which pertains to his office and is further in the nature of public duty. Okay, so this writ is issued when the inferior tribunal has declined to exercise jurisdiction while resort to certiorari, and prohibition arises when the tribunal was wrongly exercised. So that's what we see the difference. That what is a difference? Mandamus can be issued against any public authority. So what we saw public authority, what we saw state. So it commands the activity. So the writ is used for securing judicial enforcement of public duties. So in a fit case, the court can direct executives to carry out directive principles of the Constitution through this writ. So the applicant must have a legal right to performance of the legal duty by the person against whom the writ is prayed for. It is not issued if the authority has a discretion. So if you have a discretionary thing, then of course it is not issued. The Constitution of India enables mandamus to be issued by the High Courts and the Supreme Courts to all the authorities. Okay. Now we will see. So mandamus means command. I hope you have understood. Prohibition. Prohibition. Now what is prohibition? A writ of prohibition is issued to an inferior court. This goes to the inferior court, preventing the latter from usurping jurisdiction which is not legally vested in it. So when so say for example, if it is something related to NCLT, that is the National Company Law Tribunal, there are certain matters which NCLT can address. Now whether it has got that power or not. So for example, if NCLT goes and declares somebody that no, this person has committed a murder and sentences that person with a death penalty. Now, whether that NCLT has got that authority? No, the NCLT does not have authority to deal with matters related to murder. So here the prohibition can say that no, you don't have the powers. You have exceeded in excess of what you have got. You have got powers to treat with the matters or adjudicate the matters with reference to insolvency and bankruptcy or the company law matters. But if even if in the scenario you come to know that there is a murder which has happened, you don't have the authority to try that, right? You can't do it. So this is what prohibition is: when a tribunal acts without or in excess of jurisdiction or in violation of rules or law, a writ of prohibition can be asked for. It is generally issued before the trial of the case. So this is where before the trial, because the courts doesn't have the authority or the jurisdiction to try it. Then certiorari, it is available to any person wherever any body of persons having legal authority to determine the questions affecting the rights of subjects and having the duty to act judiciously in excess of their legal authority. So the writ removes the proceedings from such body to the High Court to quash a decision that goes beyond its jurisdiction. So under Constitution of India, all high courts can issue the writs of certiorari through their territorial jurisdiction when the subordinate jurisdiction acts without or in excess of jurisdiction. So here, like I told you, whether it is an excess in contravention of the rules of natural justice. So if it is in contravention of rules of natural justice, is also very important that no, the rules of natural justice are that the other party should be heard. He should be given fair chance. You can't be the judge in your own cases. So these are all principles of natural justice. So if there is a contravention of the rules of natural justice, then of course this is used. Then quo warranto. The writ of quo warranto enables enquiry into the legality of the claim which a person asserts to an office or franchise and to oust him from such position if he is an usurper. The holder of the office has to show the court under what authority he holds the office. It is issued when the office is of public and of substantive nature, created by statute or by constitution itself, and the respondent has asserted to his claim to the office. If he can be issued, it can be issued even though he has not assumed the charge. So even if he has not assumed the charge of the office, this can be taken care of. The fundamental basis of proceedings of quo warranto is that the public has an interest to see that a lawful claimant does not usurp a public office. It is a discretionary remedy which the court may grant or refuse. So this is a discretion and a discretion. Okay. So this was all about constitution. We have left with a few minutes, and I want to complete at least something on logical reasoning. Okay. Yes, NCLAT is also it is an appellate tribunal, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. So there is a question which I am answering. Now we are just left with torts, and we have left with some portion on logical reasoning. So okay guys, I received some questions on a particular topic. Ma'am, please explain this. Like I told you, see, I have due to paucity of time, due to this is a very quick lecture series. It is not that I'll be able to take each and every sentence like I told you in very detail until the time you understand. I would have loved to do that, but it's unfortunately beyond my powers, you can say, in that particular scenario. Okay, so now we will see. So we discussed about this analogy, number series, relations, alphabet series. Then what we are left with, let me see. Okay, I hope you are solving the sample questions. Assertion and reason also what we saw. We also saw about how to make a decision. Mm, yes, missing. I guess this is inserting missing characters in such type of questions. A figure set or figure or an arrangement or a matrix is given. Each figure contains certain characters, numbers, letter groups. So basically, combination of all this, and you have to identify what is a missing number or a missing character, right? So this is a pattern. 62, 28 and 9, 18, 52 and 7. And then what they will ask you, what is this pattern that you have to answer. So what do you think? What is the answer? Yes, anybody of you? Nobody? All have slept? Yes, answer is 3 because it is given here, right? Yes, because it is given here. No. So I hope these are the questions. It's more of a math which you have to use. So I'm sure all of you have studied maths enough in your schools. So that can definitely help here. Venn diagram, I guess it's easy. If all the words are of different groups, then will be shown by the diagram. That is dog, cow, horse. All these are animals, but of different groups. There is no relation. Hence, they will be represented by 3 different circles. So if the word now if the word is really unrelated to second word, so this is all subset and how things are shown differently. I guess this is very easy. Thank you. Then yes, I see in the chat box, ma'am, it is very easy, very easy, very easy. Okay, great. Number, ranking, and time, date, time sequence, number sequence, ranking sequence. I guess this is very easy. You will get a number sequence or a date time sequence, and then you will have to identify the missing number or what is. Now, Rohan ranks 7th from the top and 26th from the bottom. How many students is it? You have to calculate. Okay. Syllogism, I guess, deductive reasoning, again, where you have to eliminate and then you can find out that which is the. So all cars have vehicles. I drive a car, therefore my car has a vehicle. So major premise, all cars have vehicle. Minor premises, I drive a car. When conclusion is my car has wheels. Sorry, wheels. So I guess this is easy. So basically deductive reasoning. If you solve directly the examples, it becomes very easy for you to understand. Okay. Now if we see one sample question and we'll end today's lecture over here. So, so no singer is actor. So only one conclusion follows. Only two, some actors are dancers. So what are the statements? Some actors are singers. All singers are dancers. Now this is the statements. Conclusions. Some actors are dancers. Obviously, no singer is actor. What do you think? Yes. Only conclusion one follows because it is given. Yes. Okay, so this is a kind of a reasoning. If you practice these questions, this becomes very easy for you. Sometimes if you read the entire material, it becomes so it's very confusing sometimes, unless you read that. But if you try solving the problems, you get what they are trying to say in the explanation. So it's like a theory and a practice kind of thing. When you do something, if I explain your procedure of cooking, you would get bogged down. Oh, ma'am, what is this? But if you start doing things, it becomes easy. So similarly, if you start practicing the MCQs, it becomes very easy for you, and then you understand sometimes the theory part as well, because you've gone through, you get WhatsApps, you get jokes, you get all these things. Now in the lockdown, there are a lot of questions like this which were being given. So yeah, okay, menu today, I don't know, I will have to see. So this is easy. Okay, so I guess we'll end our session today, and then the next session I'm going to take thoughts for you. torts is also a very interesting subject, and a lot of practical examples can be able to, you can correlate that. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today. Take care of yourself. Practice the questions which you have at the, even in the end of the series. There are a lot of questions. You can solve those. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Bye bye. Thank you so much. Take care.